And we are on, I think. Every time I see this little red light, I don't know if we're on or not because I don't see a counter, but it means we are on. And as always, I have gotten good at this. I know how to press buttons. Just like the Dolphins kick off the season, or they kicked off the season. I got to get a new copy for this. You need to be ready too. After an accident, your first move should be calling 305 800 pain. Better Business Bureau accredited with an A+ rating. Your car accident personal injury specialist. Fast connection with trusted doctors and attorneys, always ready to take your call 24/7. Again, 305 800 pain, 305 800 pain.
I think we're
And
giving them a lot of business this year, but
yeah,
not the right kind of business. They're
A lot of pain.
They told us to have your people stop calling us about Tua and the Dolphins.
yeah, don't call those people for that. Okay. Just don't.
Mikey, they're going to need to be manning the phones for months if that's the.
Yeah. But speaking of pain, I thought that, maybe they were just nice little boring, like we predicted on the show, 2 touchdown loss, and you never really were in the game. Like that would have been nice now that I look back on it. But losing the way that they did was even more infuriating in my opinion. You said something, you always say things that are profound on our Discord, Simon. And by the way, if you want to be on our Discord, you got to go to discord.gg. It's right there under my name. You can see it right there. Discord.gg/OnlyFins. You become a member there, all access for $4.99 a month. You said something on Discord after the game. You said, what was it? Oh yeah, if they
Run
don't
for your
beat you,
lives.
that too. But if they don't beat you, go ahead and beat yourself. And that seems to be the Dolphins' motto. That game, they had every opportunity. That looked a lot like last year's game in Buffalo in Week 9, and I was actually surprised that they were competitive like last year in Week 9. But unlike last year they were relatively clean on offense except for a fumble. This year, they were an unmitigated disaster when it counted. And on defense, they weren't much better. But they had every opportunity. And sure enough, there they went. And they blew it. Your thoughts on the game? Well, we're going to do very little on the game. Second half of the show, we're going to talk about some possible solutions on this longer week. But your thoughts on the game, Simon? It's been a while now.
Yeah, I mean, we've all had time to think about it and digest it and kind of calm down a bit. I think it was extremely frustrating. I think whilst there are no moral victories to be in the game at the point that we were in the game, driving down to tie it was a pretty good achievement given A, it was a short week, and B, the catastrophes that have gone before this season. And I think they did some decent things on defense, and I kind of want to talk a bit about the defensive coordinator a little bit. But it just came down to the same old. It came down to the quarterback who, I think, if we're being honest, I've been out on for maybe 18 months on this podcast, and trying to stay positive with him. But in those moments where you need him, yet again, he failed to deliver, unfortunately. And I actually thought he played pretty well within the confines of the scheme, within the confines of the offense, what he was asked to do. Tough place to go and play. And he kept us in the game. Big conversions on third downs throughout the night. And, he wasn't helped by the fact that, I didn't think the offensive line, again, played particularly well in critical moments. He was often having to flood the pocket and get outside of his usual platforms to throw. But he did, and he was fairly successful. And like I said, the third down numbers were excellent. But just when you needed him most, the big mistake came, and that was it, really. And that's the frustration. I thought the coach called a pretty decent game offensively. I thought defensively, we had some stops. We played all right. And I think, Weaver was in his bag all over. Lots of people are like, oh, Anthony Weaver this, and he should be sacked. And he's trying all sorts of things. I mean, I saw 3-3-5 fronts. I saw mug fronts, sim pressures. There were multiple sort of 1 to 2 high disguise structures. There was 3 cloud. There were 2 deep fire zones. There was match cover from cover 3. I saw man on one side, zone on the other. We were pitiful in zone, and Chris, I think, had a great stat. I can't remember it now, but because it was like 4 a.m. when he tweeted it or put it in the Discord or whatever. But I think we were like 0 for 12 in terms of, I can't remember what it was, but like we'd given up like 8,000 yards in zone on like 12 plays, and we'd
I think I think the stat was Josh Allen for his career actually has league average passer rating against zone coverage. In this game, he was 12 for 12 at one point.
That's it. That's the one.
With a touchdown.
And I just think, it showed some of the things that we've been talking about, the fact that the players schematically don't really fit. I thought certain players played pretty well, actually. I thought Jack Jones generally did all right. And I did think that it did show some pretty big issues for me as it pertained to something that we've talked about for a year, which was we were all three of us worried about what would happen when Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb came back from those really serious injuries. And for Jalen Phillips, 2 serious injuries, an Achilles and an ACL. And it did feel to me like a significant lack of explosion in terms of their get off. And I know Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins are not easy outs, and that those guys get paid as well. But I just thought that, it was as like you said, Alf, I think it was as frustrating or more frustrating to lose in the manner that we did than it would have been to get blown out 55-10. But I think, Chris, overall, my biggest takeaway overall from that was that they haven't given up on Mike McDaniel, the players, I don't think. And I think what's been interesting to watch over the last 72 hours is listening now to the media battle that's taking place, where certain sides are now feeding information to the media about who's doing a really good job and who isn't doing a really good job. And I think that's becoming very obvious that the head coach is making use of his friends in the media to sell that side of things. And I'm sure the quarterback will probably do the same as each one tries to save their position moving forwards, Chris. I think that's been one of the most interesting fallouts from the defeat, is just where everybody's positioning themselves and where this thing might be headed moving forwards.
Yeah, I'll get that in a minute. But the game, as far as the game is concerned, again, this was another instance, second in a row, where, the offense did okay for the most part. Came up small in the moments. We know that. But the offense did okay. And the primary problem for trying to win a football game was, again, the defense, for really the third time in a row. And I've compared this defense to the 2019 defense, trying to get their legs under them with a new system with Brian Flores as the head coach and the guy who is running the defense essentially. Obviously, that was a crap roster back then, and it was a tank year, and everybody talked about it. But what I think goes underappreciated is the fact that this is a crap roster defensively this year as well. I think that we have overrated both the impact and quality of the defensive front that the Dolphins have put together. You have Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb coming off of, having not played a lot of football in the last couple of years. You have Chop Robinson still trying to figure out, clearly, look at his snap counts. Anthony Weaver, I think, is still trying to figure him out, actually. Even though last year he did figure him out, but it was a little bit easier because of all the injuries, right? So it was a little easier to figure out what his role was going to be overall. And now that both Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips are back, and with Matthew Judon figuring into the mix as well, they're having trouble again figuring him out. I remember at the beginning of the year, they were using Chop Robinson like a run specialist. It was a first, second down run specialist, and it made no sense. Now it's swung full the other way, and so he's a pass rush specialist on a defense that doesn't produce very many pass rush downs. So it's trying to get that impact out of a guy who was in the running for defensive rookie of the year has been a chore. So defensively, I think the one thing that no matter what bag of tricks Anthony Weaver reaches into, the thing he can't hide from is the fact that the secondary is neither fits nor is well staffed from a pure talent standpoint. They've, the personnel department has really taken liberties as far as, what guys will fit the scheme and what guys will not. That goes for the linebackers unit as well, because coverage is coverage. And so they're facing these problems where they have bad fits and guys who only just got here a month ago and things like that, relying on everybody, relying on camp invites, and it's really bad. If you break it down offensively, it looks exactly how you would think it would look. We are terrible as a defense against 11 personnel. We are terrible against 3 wide receiver personnel. The Patriots didn't even utilize it that much because that's not their identity. But it is more of the Bills' identity. It certainly is more of the Colts' identity, and they both used it to great effect against Miami's defense. And that's the thing you can't hide from. You can put big nickel out there all you want. It's no better. They're not achieving better results by putting 3 safeties out there because they think their safeties are better than their corners. I think they're from a passing standpoint, they're averaging almost very close to 9 yards per play against the pass when the opposing offense goes into 3 wide receiver, 11 personnel. It's dismal. They're over 4.5 yards per carry rushing. The success rates, what I would deem to be a success, are just absurd, upwards of 70%, 60% in the run, over 60% in the run, 70%, and yet when the opposing offense allows Miami to stack their defense a little more oriented toward that defensive front, a little more oriented towards the guys that we know and trust, with only 4 defensive backs on the field, success rates go way down. The yards per play on passing go way down. The yards per play on rushing go way down. So the defense can look like a mediocre defense if they're allowed to be in base against 21 personnel or 12 personnel or something like that. Colts game notwithstanding, where they definitely made some hay in the passing game with those 2 tight ends. But still, you can't run from this because the league is an 11 personnel league. So I don't know what answers Anthony Weaver is going to be able to come up with to make a trash secondary better than a trash secondary, to make trash linebackers, at least in coverage, better than trash linebackers in coverage. And nothing I said this on X, on Twitter the other day, nothing juxtaposes quite as well as Josh Allen being able to throw directly into linebacker coverage, directly into linebacker zones with absolute impunity. Just does not care. He can just throw it right in there and have zero fear that our linebackers are going to get a beat on it, undercut the pass, get into the passing lane, make a play, anything like that. He just throws directly into it, and these guys are catching the ball, a yard or 2 away from the linebacker who's just sitting there, eyeballing the quarterback trying to figure out where the ball is going to go. He can do that. But in the moment, the penultimate moment of the game, the one that lost the game, Tua can't even throw to an adjacent zone. An adjacent zone, not even that linebacker's zone, right? Without that guy beelining straight to where the ball was going to go and undercutting it for a pick. I mean, those 2 things, you compare and contrast those 2 things, that is what Miami's facing. On offense, I think you are seeing a slow progression throughout the years. It started in 2023, late in the season, where teams started to take away the big play, right? They started to keep their safeties back and take away the big play. And now not only are they taking away the big play, they are robbing the shit out of those short zones. Okay. And what that means is that they have a beat on exactly what Miami's doing. It's like, think about Tecmo Super Bowl when defenses used to call your play. There was nothing you can do. They have a bead on what Miami's tendencies are. They have a bead on what Miami's doing, and schematically, they are not making it difficult. To watch Kurt Warner spend 30 minutes in a very Iowa nice way, but 30 minutes excoriating the play design of the interception that lost the game for Miami against the Bills, and all the lack of fundamental detail in the way that play is organized and designed, and the route combinations, the progressions, everything about it is just it brings to mind the things that I've been hearing for going on 4 years now, which is that Mike McDaniel is a gifted run coordinator who runs a pass offense that is simplistic. When you really boil it down, that, the LaFleurs and the McVays, they got the pass brains, okay? And we got the run brains. And it is a great run brain. We have a really good run offense when we decide to use it. But the pass offense, simplistic. It's a 64-bit run game with an 8-bit pass game, and the one thing that kept it from being exposed sooner was the wildcat-like innovation that happened in 2023 with the cheat motions. Okay. And notice that took the league by storm, just like the Wildcat took the league by storm. People started to copy it, but then people started to prepare for it better, and its effectiveness got less and less and less, and there was no follow-up. Okay. It was an innovation that was, cool at the time, but all it did was cover up a lack of basic fundamentals in the details of the passing game. And we're seeing that over and over. And now we're going to be faced with a situation where the quarterback that we all said, if he stays healthy, obviously we're going to be good, right? Everybody was saying that. Well, now he's going to stay healthy and he's going to suck. And that's gonna and that's what we're faced with right now, and that's what we've been faced with for three. I don't think he's sucked necessarily in the 3 games, but he hadn't been good either. So I think this is what we're seeing, and this is the downfall of a regime. This is what it looks like. And going right up to Simon's last point with the infighting, you've got Mike McDaniel out there in the press saying, the play call came in time, but the personnel groupings, and I don't know about that. And then the coach who might have been responsible for the personnel groupings, like a day or two later, got in there. And he says, we as a staff found that we could have continued to run the ball more in the second half, but got away from us. Who's the play caller? Not that guy, not Frank Smith. He's talking about Mike McDaniel, right? So you've got this infighting. You got Mike McDaniel kind of de facto blaming his offensive coaches. You got Mike McDaniel de facto blaming Tua. You've now got the press battles, as Simon was alluding to. You got Tom Pelissero out there saying, I know it was out there that it was Terrell Bernard, the linebacker of the Bills, who created that, who got that interception, that said that they'd seen that play on film study and they knew it was coming and knew exactly what to do, right? And you got Tom Pelissero out there saying, yeah, I know that was out there, but the Dolphins don't really run that play that much, and so I don't know. Tom Pelissero has no friggin' clue what plays and what concepts the Dolphins run and how often they run them. He was fed that. Okay.
Yeah.
He was fed that by somebody.
Especially as we literally ran it the week before against the Patriots. The
Exactly. And yet Tom Pelissero authoritatively, well, they don't really run that play that often. And what was the gist of his entire spot on Rich Eisen's show? Poor Mike McDaniel having to game plan for a limited quarterback like Tua Tagovailoa. You're just seeing it one by one. McDaniel and his camp and his people are turning on everybody around them for self-preservation purposes. How long is it going to be before it's Anthony Weaver? How long is it going to be before it's Chris Greer? Probably already is, if we're being honest. It's really become every man for himself, and they're trying to cover that over and paper that over with, we're still playing together. The players are still playing for Mike McDaniel. They're still playing for the coaches. Do we know that they're playing for Mike McDaniel? They play for each other. They certainly play because they want to play well, and they play for, each other. But are they really playing for Mike McDaniel right now? I don't know. because after that game, Tua Tagovailoa, he made it pretty clear that 10 times out of 10, that was the right read, on that interception, or at least from his standpoint. And Mike Daniel comes right out and says, no, he should have thrown it to the flat. Even though, Simon, on the play that you referenced, the New England play, when he did throw it to the flat, it was because the defender that he was reading, that defensive back, did the opposite of what he did against the Buffalo Bills.
The Bills, yeah.
And the Bills, he actually did move over to buzz the flat, right? And that's why he hit the curl.
Can I break some news here?
Hold on. In the Patriots game, he did not. He stayed over the curl, and that's why he hit the flat. And Mike McDaniel is trying to get us to believe that no, it should have gone to the flat both times, even though that read, the defensive player that you're reading on the play, acted differently in both plays.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'll break some news right here. Mike McDaniel's just lying. He's lying on that play. He's just lying. There's no other way to, it's right there. Like, we can all purchase NFL Pro and look at the all 22. He's lying, and Kurt Warner broke down the play really, really well, and Tua's actually right in this regard, because that's how he's taught to look at that play. He's taught to read the flat defender. Where the flat defender goes is where the ball is going to go. And that play was a perfect microcosm of this entire team, because that play had bad from pretty much everybody across the board. Like, at least nobody died on the play. So that's a good thing.
What I think about that play,
consider last year against the Bills, how that game ended.
What I think about that play, though, is that the way they ran it last year against last week against the Patriots is that actually he threw it in the flat to Achane, who was actually fairly well covered. The comeback route that he was picked off on against Buffalo was wide open. There was nobody near it, and the tight end goes round behind the linebacker, I think was Spillane. So it doesn't attract the linebacker to draw him away. It's just Spillane is slow to get across to I assume it was Waddle in the middle. I can't remember now. What I think about the Bills play is that Miami will have looked at that on tape, and I'm sure that they would have gone, the middle guy is absolutely wide open. He's wide open. Like, if you get that chance, we're going to call that play. Just throw it to the middle guy. The problem with that is that he almost throws it blind, because Dion Walker is in his face. He almost has to throw it around Dion Walker, who's 349 pounds, because obviously the protection from
Brunskill,
just completely falls down, and Tua has no time. So my assumption is that he's just seen that on tape and just saw how wide open it was. Probably got a glimpse of Dodson. Was it Dodson who picked it off? Not Dodson. Whoever it was that picked it off. Bernard that picked it off.
Bernard.
As if Terrell Dodson would be making a play in the fourth quarter.
Did I say that earlier?
Yeah. I think he thought that he'd seen it on tape and seen how wide open, and maybe he believed that Tanner Conner was going to attract Bernard in the same way that he attracted Spillane, or at least kept Spillane honest in terms of not moving. And I think he threw it blind to Waddle, and it just got picked.
It's also a one step. It's a one step drop, rock back and throw kind of situation.
Yeah. You're anticipatory throw to a spot.
Yeah, absolutely. and the idea that you're able to read multiple defenders, to make a throw like that on a one step, just rock back and get it out. I think that's where Kurt Warner had the biggest problem, is like, okay, you want him to read that flat defender, whether he's defending the flat or the curl, right? And you want him to read the middle linebacker as well in a matter of less than 1.0 seconds while rocking back and throw. If that is the ask for your quarterback on that play design, then your offense is trash.
Yeah.
Your offensive play design is trash.
Yeah. The other problem is that he just does not have the arm strength to gun it in there.
No,
it's just
not at all.
And it's worse than it's been before. And it's he doesn't. He's never had a strong arm.
It was
Yeah.
tipped. I think the video did kind of show that conclusively, that and that probably, I mean, that probably was the difference between Terrell Bernard kind of knocking it down or having an absolutely clean shot at that interception and taking the interception and making the biggest play in the game.
The thing that surprised me most on the 3 games, both watching them live and on then subsequently all 22, is that he is rejecting high tariff throws because I think he just doesn't believe he can get it there. And that has become obvious. There are throws out there that a stronger armed quarterback would complete and would make. They were there in the Colts game. They were certainly there in week 2 against New England. They were certainly there against the Bills. And he just continues to reject those kind of, unless they are sort of those kind of chuck and duck, sort of throw it up and hope that somebody makes a play, like he did with Tyreek when Tyreek should have caught it, but also the Tyreek catch against New England last week. I think he's rejecting those plays because he just doesn't believe he's got the arm to gun it in there. And I think that opens another question about whether or not he's, is he hurt? Is he, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that it's pretty much over in terms of the long-term Tua situation. Actually, the most interesting thing now is how that contract is dealt with and how we get out of it as best as we can, and whether or not you operate as a JV team for 2 years pretty much because you're just going to eat the entire massive great chunk of it and just accept that we're going to try and load up through the draft and be a JV team, as I just said. But I do think it's interesting that whether it's the hip, whether it's the show, whether it's a cumulative effect, Chris, as we talked in Discord the other night, it's a cumulative effect of all the hits, all the punishment that he's taken, whether it's a mental thing, whatever it is, he just does not have the torque to make those deep out throws, or when he sees guys breaking free over the top, he just doesn't have the confidence to gun it in there. And you look around the league and see guys making those throws. He just cannot make those higher tariff throws at all, and he's having to toggle between those kind of underneath guys, or those flare routes, or the screens or whatever, because he just doesn't have the torque to get it down the field. And I think that's as worrying as anything else.
We're going to go to.
It's worrying that they're able to take away both. That they are still taking away a lot of those deep opportunities, like they were in 24, right? But they're also getting a fine bead, and even finer incrementally every week, finer bead on where those underneath throws are going.
Yeah.
And so you get picked off by Mapu, you get picked off by Leatu Latu, you get picked off by Terrell Bernard. It's happened all 3 weeks.
And the question is, can he adjust to those to not throwing into those between the numbers windows, and take the opportunity of the throws that are out there that are of a higher difficulty, that involve really driving throws, potentially to the wide side of the field, 15,
He's
20.
Not going to. He's not going to.
He isn't. He absolutely isn't. He absolutely isn't. He's just going to reject those throws because I just don't think he thinks he can make them, which is a damning indictment of where we are.
I think that in order to get this to work, you need to run a pretty high IQ offense as far as the passing game is concerned. You can't just rely on run pass conflict to do the heavy lifting. Especially when you're not committed to the run. You just, game after game proves it that they're not that committed to the run. You can't rely on that to do all the heavy lifting when you have a limited quarterback. You have to, I mean, when Sean Payton was running an offense for Drew Brees, do you think that was a low IQ offense that, that wasn't necessarily well constructed with a lot of detail? I think the opposite. I think it was. And I think that was probably an integral part of making that work. That the fact that Drew Brees was a very high IQ quarterback running a very high IQ offense. And I don't think that's what Miami is doing right now.
Yeah. Alf, I know you're trying to get to break, but I do think there's a really interesting macro picture in all this, because depending on what happens, and there's lots of if, buts, and maybes in this scenario, right? But let's just say that Chris Greer is fired and Mike McDaniel stays on. I think the conversations that are going to be had, and maybe even are being had already with the owner, is that if you are not willing to bite the 90 whatever million it is by cutting Tua at the end of the season, or the 67 million, whatever it is, after June the 1st, you almost by default have to keep the same offensive system pretty much. Because you just can't run anything else. Like what like somebody tweeted me today about, we need to fire McDaniel and Tua can just run a different. What system do you think Tua is going to be running? Like what?
Also, who's going to sign up for that?
Yeah, who's gonna tether themselves to a quarterback that can only really run one system, and at the moment he can't even run that one properly. So, is there an argument that Stephen Ross will say, "Look, I can't, I'm not prepared to swallow the 90 million, and I'm not prepared to swallow the 67 million because I'm a businessman after all, and therefore we need to, whether that's a quarterback in the draft this year that we sit for a year, whether that's Lenoris Sellers or whoever, and you sit them for a year behind Tua, and you know that in 2027 that's when you're going to get rid of Tua. But I do think it's a very interesting conundrum as part of this kind of jigsaw puzzle of where we go with this team and this franchise, is that if you are going to keep the quarterback, you almost by default have to keep the offensive people in mind. And it feels like Frank Smith is on the out. And if that's the case, then that only really leaves Mike McDaniel because he's the guy that implements the system. You're not going to.
Or Bobby Slowick can do something because nobody knows what
Yeah,
he does in that building.
Of course, but is Bobby Slowick A going to be the head coach, and B is a new head coach just going to say, yeah, that's fine, Bobby Slowick, you run the offense, and you have to keep that system.
Well,
do you know what I mean?
Or the continuity pick would be Anthony Weaver, who would keep one of those offensive assistants, and they would keep
That's the other question.
And then you argue that he might be being set up to fail.
Yeah, but I just think there's sort of existential debate about if you keep the quarterback, you've got to keep the system, and does that mean that you also then have to keep the head coach at a time where it feels like their relationship is a little bit sort of.
That's a good question.
Yeah. Before we go to break, let me just say something about that play. I don't like running these flood concepts onto the play side, flat curl corner, because you're essentially. And look, teams are adding a defender. We're seeing it all over the league. They're adding a defender to all those concepts. So you're talking about having 3 eligibles and 4 defenders outside the hashes, and the quarterback is supposed to throw into essentially a mob of people. You're throwing into there's 7 people standing on one side of the hash, and the quarterback is on that side of the hash, and he's throwing into 7 people. That's the play design.
I generally thought he called quite a mature game, actually. From and I know it's a low bar,
but get those flood concepts to the play side and throw them in the trash. They don't work. They will not work. And you need a bazooka of an arm, unless you're going to design to throw that corner. And we know Tua doesn't like throwing corner routes. He just don't, which is weird because he had a touchdown against the Patriots on a perfectly designed corner route. But he just won't throw it when you need him to throw it.
But that's that touchdown against New England was classic Tua in that he's very good at those sort of 25-ish yard lofted with touch over the top. He is not like this is the bad example, but he's obviously never going to make that throw that Justin Herbert made last night. But for people that watched South Carolina, Missouri on Saturday night, for example, he's not going to make the throw that Lenoris Sellers makes where he's rolling to his left and he guns it 30 yards down the field to a tiny spot. That is just not what he's going to do. If that touchdown to Waddle involved firing it into a tight window rather than lofting it over the head of a deep, I just don't think he's going to take that on because I just don't think that's his kind of throw. His throw, that's a perfect Tua throw, the one that he scored with. There are probably 5 or 6 over the last season and a half where he does exactly the same. Those kind of lofted sort of, pitching wedges into the, over the head of a DB. He's very, very good at those. If you said to him, you're gonna have to fire that, gun that between 2, that's just not a throw he's going to make.
Open rhetorical question. Rhetorical. We don't have to discuss it. Is what we have seen in the moments, the big moments in the game, is what we have seen the quarterback or the play caller or both? Because both of them were having a decent game, right? And then all of a sudden we've got a problem with that play call, or we've got a problem with that execution in that moment. And I think it's interesting because you could put together a lot of stats of Tua from say a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, his time in the league. when actually he had very good stats in the final moments of the game. He had very good stats in the fourth quarter. He had very good stats when it came to comebacks and things like that. Since he's met Mike McDaniel, that has gone absolutely down the shitter, right? And I wonder if Mike McDaniel, who was a play caller for the first time in Miami when he got the head coach job, if part of this character of the offense that we characterized to Tua about, how you can be playing well for most of the game, and then all of a sudden, bad play, here comes the bad play, here comes the bad play. I wonder if you have the same thing, bad play call, here comes the bad play call. And we've seen that in other ways, multiple ways.
Sure, like hindsight's a beautiful thing, but that first down play, just run it. You were running the ball so well, just run it.
Yeah,
just
and we're gonna get
to
and we're gonna get to some of the good things, which were less than a handful from that game. But we're gonna go to break. So let me tell you about Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your money. And you can play with as little as $1. $1. Tonight, you know what? I kind of like Amon-Ra St. Brown. They should be 1 billion points in this game tonight. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 73.5 receiving yards. How about higher on that? How about Derrick Henry just to score a touchdown? Because you could get that one. And Lamar Jackson is a gimme on Underdog. They're essentially just giving you Lamar Jackson over 0 passing yards. I think that one's safe. So if Lamar can get you more than 0 passing yards, that's a score. So throw in Derrick Henry to score and Amon-Ra St. Brown over 73. I know it's a big number, but he's getting the ball. He's getting the target. 73.5 receiving yards. Download the app today and sign up with the promo code 3YARDS. That's the promo code 3YARDS, the number 3 yards, to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code 3YARDS. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be next? Underdog. Make picks. Win money.
Be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And we're back. That was smooth, if I don't say so myself. You know what wasn't smooth? Like what gets you onto a team is probably what gets you cut. Get rid of Tanner Connor already, please. I hate to go back to that play again. But my God, he's in a combination with Devon Achane and Jalen Waddle. And if you watch the play again, he's making himself skinny to try to get to his corner route as if he's trying to get open. No, you're trying to facilitate for Jalen Waddle and Devon Achane in the combination. The ball is not coming to you. You know the ball is not coming to you. What are you doing? Well, seems like Darren Waller's back. What impact do you expect, Simon? And if you may, can you at least use 30 seconds to trash Tanner Connor?
I think you've done a very good job of trashing your own boy there. The Darren Waller thing. I mean, Mike McDaniel said he's obviously
back. Good news.
Yeah, I mean, is it like he's kind of been built up to be this unbelievable messiah because we're talking about it because we kind of think it's hilarious in many regards. And I don't know what people are expecting. Like, what are they expecting? He hasn't played football for like 2 years, pretty much. Before that, he was injured fairly significantly in terms of, in and out of lineups, missed half a season, concussions, etc., etc. He's in his early to mid 30s. Like, this isn't kind of prime Keith Jackson or, Mike Ditka or early Travis Kelce that's coming back. This is a guy that's...
Or Jonnu Smith.
Well, Johnny Smith, this is a guy who's had one big season in his career, and I mean, maybe he has a couple of catches. I mean, look, maybe he goes out and he has like 13 catches and is unbelievable. But I mean, can we see it? Really? Like, I just don't see it. Maybe he has a couple of catches just because, it's almost like Chris Greer saying, look, you just got to get him a couple of catches in whatever scenario so it doesn't look like, we haven't just been taking the piss out of everybody for the last few months because of everything that's happened. We ignore the position.
There's got to be something going on behind the scenes with, the sort of the infighting thing that we talked about already. There's, aspects of this that touch on, Chris Greer, that touch on Frank Smith, who we think could be on his way out. That there was obviously some kind of public passive aggressive, thing going on between those, and Frank Smith is obviously, Darren Waller, that's his boy. Frank Smith is, and so there's a lot of intrigue, potential for intrigue, that touches on Drew Rosenhaus as well, who's kind of been a de facto shadow GM for the Dolphins for as long as Chris Greer has been around and been in charge of things, and it makes me wonder if Mike McDaniel is just not too thrilled about that. And because he's the guy that publicly a week ago was, insinuating that they might make the decision to just move on, period. Like we might have to make a decision this week about what's best for the team, as he said something like that. And you know what that's code for. So I think that I wonder if and now he's talking about him being in a situational snap pitch count for this game. He's only going to be out there in certain situations. Compare that with how Darren Waller was used as sort of to help reclaim some territory in the PR battle after the Jonnu Smith trade, where people are like, this guy just broke franchise records for you and you just traded him away, and immediately they signed Darren Waller, and they're like, hey, we got Darren Waller, like he was going to have this massive impact, listing him as tight end 1 on the depth chart from the whole way. And it kind of speaks to the dysfunction of the team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Mike McDaniel, if you remember back to some of those press conferences when the rumors were out there that Jonnu Smith was being shopped, Mike McDaniel went to bat, talking about he's an important part of the offense and we like Jonnu. And like usually you'll see he'll clam up a little bit and he won't say a word. And he'll say, look, we'll do what's best for the team. No, he was actually kind of, I wouldn't say lobbying, but he was not lobbying for keeping Jonnu Smith. Then they trade him out from under him and they hand him Darren Waller, and he does this for an entire month. So, it's interesting in and of itself, okay, that we have these factions inside the building. And Mike McDaniel, who has the power to fix a lot of this infighting, it's called bring him into your office and say, thanks, but no thanks. We can pay you the balance of the season, but you're going to have to go do this elsewhere. Frank or Bevel, whoever. But yet here they are, and they're all in their own little fiefdoms, throwing stones at each other. Let's talk about some of the good stuff from this game, which was very little. And some of it is actually bad. I'm going to start somewhere where, it's actually a bad thing that this guy actually is playing okay in the last 2 weeks. Actually playing pretty well the last 2 weeks. Rasul Douglas has played well the last 2 weeks. They wanted this guy in March. He shows up here in August, and they paid him $2.5 million. It's $3 million with incentives that are based on playing time, which means he's going to earn them. This is the kind of lack of conviction and stupidity that this. If they were fighting over saving $500,000 here or there, and it took them 6 months to bring in a guy that they identified as a scheme fit for Anthony Weaver, and now he's playing well after you threw away the first game and you threw away an entire preseason trying out with all these different guys like Storm Duck and whoever. Like that's an awful mark on this front office, but so is everything else. Your thoughts on Rasul Douglas's play, and by the way, throw in Dante Trader, who I think got a cut in his playing time as Ashton Davis played a little bit more, but is going to be counted on to play much more now because Jason Marshall seems like is going on the shelf for a little bit. Simon, the guys that played well in the secondary, which is very few. Minka was terrible in this game, by the way. Your
He's
thoughts
not.
on those guys?
He's played really poorly this season. Douglas was fine, but he's an exponent of zone, and we already talked earlier on about how that zone got abused. It's hard to give props to a guy who plays in a system or is most suitable to a system in which we were embarrassed in, and that's the blatant truth of it. I thought of the plays that Dante Trader made, I thought he saved a touchdown running the alley really well against James Cook when Cook burst to the outside. I thought that was a pretty decent play. But overall, it's a disaster back there, generally. I mentioned Jack Jones, and I thought Jones was the best player in the secondary. What I thought was interesting, though, when Jones made that play, for us, I think it was for us to get the ball back when Sealer then ran into the punter. Nobody celebrated with him. I thought that was really weird. And I saw somebody else pick that, a former player pick it up as well and say, like, he thought it was really weird that, like, nobody was celebrating with him. I mean, maybe that's just a small thing and it's irrelevant. I just was like, and I get that he's has been a difficult personality. But, like, on the back end, I maintain what I've said for 6 months. It's just a really bad group. Losing Jason Marshall, I think it was a good idea to play him at nickel, but I think it's been a disaster. And yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else to say about the secondary. It's just not very good and consistently just gets abused week in, week out. And I think that's why Weaver was doing all the things that he was trying to do, including, like, people are losing their minds about the fact that we were dropping Jalen Phillips off into coverage and stuff. But this is what DCs, you look around the league, this is what defensive coordinators are doing. You know, it's not, you saw it last night. Abdul Carter was being dropped off. We've seen it to unfortunate effect with Leatu Latu. He had the interception against us. It happened. Micah Parsons was being dropped back into coverage yesterday. The best pass rusher in the game alongside Myles Garrett. This is sometimes just what happens, and it's not ideal necessarily, and you want your pass rushers rushing the passer, but, you know, you're trying to attack from as many different angles and as many different ways and means as is humanly possible. And but yeah, the secondary is just, it's dire, and I don't see much hope on the horizon for improvement. You know, unfortunately, Deion Sanders is walking in through that door, and yeah, it's going to be a long year on the back end.
I think Chris? what it speaks to about the Rasul Douglas, just to get back to the original question and point, is the taking for granted of things that are kind of deemed extraneous to larger questions about, you know, what the guy looks like on tape and the dollars. You know, there's a lot of things that are deemed extraneous to that really aren't extraneous. Injury histories pop up. We're the most injury. I think somebody recently tallied all the IR players and IR and PUP and everything across the league, and Miami is far and away the highest. Like,
yep.
17.
It's not even close. It's 17. Not even close. Yeah. You know, injury histories are not extraneous to the question about, you know, should you get the guy. The timing of getting a player is not extraneous. It is not a non-issue to get a guy on the eve of the season and expect him to contribute for you. And it's like, oh, well, you know, as long as it's the right number, you know, from a financial standpoint, then it doesn't matter. That's so not conducive to playing good football. And that's the consistent issue that we see in this front office is, you know, and frankly, this is why I talk about the next GM. I don't want the next GM to be another redundant, glorified lead scout. I feel like front offices are stacked with a lot of redundancy in the scouting department. They have a lot of eyeballs on these guys, scouting them at all levels,
and too many
and,
opinions.
and so what you do when you add a general manager who is essentially a league scout or a lead scout is you just add another layer of redundancy. Except we have all these layers of scouting and eyeballs on these players, but this is the one that matters. you know so I think that you need somebody in charge that has more vision than that. You need somebody in charge that has a firmer grasp on all of the details of sport and the organization and the way every facet of it needs to be run in order to keep true to your vision. And you need to actually have a vision, like not just talk about a vision, but like your vision isn't just winning. There has to be an actual detailed vision that covers every facet of the organization and how it needs to run in order to achieve your goals. And I think that you're looking at an example that's kind of that's a shining example of what happens when you just forget about all that other stuff. Well, is it the right number, and is this tape good? Okay. So I think that it's a lot more than that, and the Dolphins are just showing that year in and year out.
The way forward, Simon, and I'd like to get your thought on this, Chris. They're going to have to rework some things, even on offense. Like the defense maybe gets a little bit better as the season moves on, just because it usually does, as you play lesser, personnel, lesser competition. But the offense, man, they're going to have to get back in. And I look, I did the numbers on this, and I posted them on OnlyFans. They changed this offense drastically. Gone are the run actions. There were games last year where in 60 snaps, and let's just say 34 pass snaps. Let's say 34 pass snaps, there would be 20 run actions. I counted 5 in the Bills game. 5 run actions in all of Tua's dropbacks. I believe he had 32 dropbacks. 5. That's a big, big change. They're gonna have to get back, and I'd like to get your opinion on this, Simon, and then Chris. Put the ball in the hands of your running backs, which is a unit you can trust that you really, really like, and have Tua get back to his run action game and play action passing, and build the offense around that. Ollie Gordon on first down, Devon Achane on first down, short passing game to the running backs, and get back to your play action game and your run action game. But everything built upon those two guys getting the ball first to establish them. Your thoughts, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, you've answered the question. You've said exactly what I was going to say. I mean, give the ball to the running backs. Get Gordon more involved, Chris. I mean, that's exactly what I do.
Yeah, I think they have gotten away from that. I think statistically, you can look at the games that have been played and see that there's fewer than you were expected with a Tua Tagovailoa, particularly of both RPOs and play. And at least I think this is what you're kind of getting at. I think that historically speaking, something like half of his pass attempts Tua's pass attempts end up being something along those lines. This year, it's more like a quarter. If you look at it, I think I just looked at it just now, and it's something like 21 out of 89 pass attempts for Tua, which is not even close to his usual. His usual is about 45-50% for those RPOs and play actions. So yes, there's definitely a difference. You can blame it on when the defense is getting just destroyed, drive in and drive out. I think that that has an issue. That does take an effect on your play calling that way. So we have to be a little bit understanding of that. But clearly they've gone away from some of the stuff that they did in the past.
All right, final thing. Zach Sealer, in my opinion, has been awful all 3 games. He was really, really bad in this one, and he had a consequential penalty. The young guys haven't been all that great either. The young defensive tackles have not been very good. I never thought I'd be pining for the day that Benito Jones is coming back, but I think Zach Sealer's. I'm not going to call it failures because I think he's going to turn it around. He's a good player. He's a good player. If there's a guy you can count on this team to turn around his play, it's going to be Zach Sealer. But he's going to need help, and he's going to need a guy, a partner that he can trust. And if Kenneth Grant, it's going to take him a little while to come around toward the end of the season, maybe. So
but what are people expecting from Kenneth Grant? Like, I'm confused as to what. I mean, are people thinking he's just going to turn into Aaron Donald? Some great that is not his profile. You know, people are like saying, and I totally understand. It's really bad that people are just saying, "Oh, we should have drafted Will Johnson. We should have drafted Tyler Warren." Yada yada yada. And maybe that's true. Maybe that will turn out to be true. But what Kenneth Grant has been brought in to do never shows up on the stat sheet. Never shows up on the stat sheet. If people are expecting him to turn into some sort of 10-sack-a-season monster, that is not his game. That wasn't his game really at Michigan. He's 330 pounds. That is not what he's going to do. You know, his aim is to be the kind of the Vita Vea. He's not going to be Dexter Lawrence. That is not how he plays. And so, you know, I think people that are expecting some sort of, you know, what you want to do is be able to hold the point of attack and you know, soak up a double team to allow somebody else to make a play or break through into the pocket and at least move the quarterback off the platform. None of that shows up in the sheets that 75% of fans are looking at, and I think, you know, he's up against it already. But to me, the key to getting that defense, Chris, back on track is interior pressure. I think that they've got to get back, and they need desperate help from, whether that's from Phillips, whether that's getting Zeke Biggers active, whether that's from Kenneth Grant. It's finding something that's going to light a fire under Sealer, because that's going to help the guys on the edge, where it might be blitzing more. And I know that Weave doesn't like to blitz a lot, but it's to me, the key to getting the defense going is that interior pressure, and it's got to come from somebody.
Well, I disagree slightly on the key to getting the defense back going again, because I think it does start in the back end. I think that if you don't cover anybody, then what those guys do up front is just, I mean, it's poor. You're setting them up for failure. More than a year ago, like before the 24 season, I wrote something along the lines of, you know, Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer are going to miss each other. Right. Because those two, as good as they are, as good as the sum of parts were, they were somehow still significantly greater than the sum of parts together. In the way that they worked together. And that this defense involves a lot of work between those guys in how they stunt and how they blitz an offensive lineman for on behalf of the other one, and the ways that they read the keys of the offense and read the backfield together. I think that you bought yourself a year because you got Calais Campbell, and he's, you know, Professor Oak. I mean, he just he could coach D-line tomorrow, right? Because he's just that smart and that savvy, and he kept the unit afloat even as you disturbed that chemistry between Zach Sealer and Christian Wilkins. But really, you just bought a year because Calais Campbell's not here anymore. So now Zach Sealer is on his own with guys like Benito Jones. It's not work. I don't think that works particularly well with two rookies, Jordan Phillips and Kenneth Grant. That's not working particularly well. And I think that, yeah, he misses having a veteran that will share his understanding and his vision of what's going on in the backfield and what they need to do together. But also, they're really playing victim to the linebacker coverage as well as the zone coverage on the back end. I mean, there's just not much you can do. I will keep saying it over and over again. These guys up front are going to look bad because this whole defense was structured under a lie, which was that, you know, it doesn't matter what you do on the back end. And it doesn't matter if your linebackers are coverage fits in the scheme. All that matters is you got those front seven players, or you got those defensive front players, those edges that are wild, and the one defensive tackle, Zach Sealer, that can be counted. It was a lie from the start, and we're finding that out, and it's very unfortunate.
All right, I think we can call it here. The next time we talk to you, we will preview Jets Dolphins. Everybody's wearing those rivalry uniforms. They're gonna look really. At least both teams are gonna look pretty snazzy next Monday. But till then,
Cheers, guys.
Later. Thanks for hanging in there.
No worries.